So tonight, I'd like us to, we may or we may not get all the way there because I want to make sure of some foundational things, but we may get to the place where we start to discuss surfacing your purpose. But, I'm pushing you guys through this material, and I know that. You're a test pilot kind of group. So thank you for being guinea pigs, and thank you for giving it your best shot. And but I want to make sure that nothing is lost along the way. And for some of you, that might mean that you won't go all the way through. And I can mention some things at the end of this time, or I will start to next week to give different ways come the end of the month that you can handle what you've gone through. But what I want to really make sure that we are on the same page about is, first of all, the importance of each step. And so the first one is the importance of that clear understanding of your design. So that's that, you've been made on purpose. But I want to encourage you that recognizing and being able to articulate what you believe is God's purpose, his design in you, is an act of worship. It's an act of recognizing, again, that you are an expression of the image of God. And this is not something about just knowing yourself to know yourself. Or I was saying recently, this is not just an exercise of self-actualization. No, this is an understanding that God has created you and uniquely and intentionally. And so once you get to the place where you have done all the inventories and really thought about it, you've compiled it, and you're actually to the place where you are able to articulate it in a paragraph or two. And you are actually now able to say it, and you're starting to pray it. You really are declaring God's intent in one small sphere of the world, which happens to be you. That I have been created for these purposes, and this is my identity. It informs your being of who you are. It informs angels and demons, and it says, Father, I'm paying attention and I'm taking responsibility for who I am in you. It is a significant work. It involves digging down. In the earlier session that I had tonight, we were talking about where Jesus in Luke 6 describes the difference between the wise builder and the foolish builder. But the wise builder digs down deep to lay the foundation on the rock. And this course is about that like nothing I've actually ever seen. That you want to dig down deep to understand your design on the rock, on the person of who Jesus is, what he made you to be. And that takes the work of doing not only the inventories, but now assimilating them, bringing them together. What's the word that I want? But somebody give me a word for this. You're taking the information and you are bringing it together into
synthesizing.
That's one of them. That works. But doing the work of bringing that together and looking at all the overlaps to see this describes me. This describes me in a way that when I express it to you, Father, I feel like I'm saying, thank you. You made me these ways. But I'm also aware of the around the edges. I use the term shadow term. Some people weren't sure what I meant by that, and some of the personality language. And we'll talk a little bit more about even false self kinds of things. But we're declaring who we are before him, and we are letting that frame our understanding of ourselves. That last part of that assignment of getting it to the place where you're actually using it. One is the discipline that will take discipline of doing the work and then doing the work to bring it together. And then it might take a little bit of pressing through the awkwardness of sharing, of saying it. Now, again, saying it to others and getting feedback, but now praying it. You may have never done that before. Just do it for a couple weeks. I promise you this will change your life. This is really significant. And so I just want to encourage you, don't fall short of that. Today, the reason why I said I hope to get to surfacing your purpose is I want to emphasize that there are 3 key building blocks, and they're what has happened up to this point. It isn't the surfacing your purpose. These 3 building blocks will change your life. I promise you, but you got to do all 3 of them. And they are iterative, that you're going to visit them again and again, and they all interplay, but it will be very significant. And so that first piece, if there's part of it that's still fuzzy, or you did some things, or you don't know what those tests really meant, go back, get it, because it's only for you. It isn't for anybody else, but it's for you to do the work, to dig down deep, to lay a foundation on the rock and be able to stand on it in the name of Jesus. And when you start praying and declaring it, the enemy now can't just wipe you away. It says a storm's going to come. They're going to come. It's going to happen. But you'll be able to withstand it because you've done your homework and know where to stand. Secondly, the importance of a clear and inspiring description of your roles. And I'm bringing this up, just, you probably know this, but there's a lot of assessments. If you think there's a lot for you to kind of like do, imagine like I'm glancing over all these things, right? So I spend usually the afternoon Sundays going over your assessments and seeing them. And it's awesome because I'm getting to understand you better. Like I feel like I'm with you, not only on the videos, but your assessments. But I'm also seeing that particularly in this roles one, that often people will write these kind of generic roles. I'm a daughter. Well, that's got no pop to it. God didn't make you to be a daughter. He made you to be a daughter to do what right now? What at this season of your life? A daughter who brings joy to my mom, a daughter who speaks truth to my dad because nobody else, he can't listen to anybody else. Whatever it is that you feel like God's assignment to you, I want you to relate your role to get to a place that you feel inspired by God to live that, not with some long description. Pop. This is one of my roles. I know when I am exercising this, I'm doing what God has made me for. And so that takes work. And that may even feel like I could never get there. I promise you can. But it takes thinking about it. It takes reflecting. It might take asking questions. It might even take asking the persons in that role that are affected by that role. What would be most helpful to you? And so you get that, but then you pray about that. You say, is that what you have, God? So one of my roles, I'm a father. I have 4 adult-ish children, ages 23 to 32. And one of the aspects of my role for them is I want them to have in the back of their mind a picture of me that says, I am for you no matter what. And that's really important to me because that's not what will naturally be there for them. They have a strong father who's got a pretty intense faith, right? So they're going to feel guilty all the time. Am I living up to what my dad wants for me? Then the enemy wants to land on that thing and make it nasty for them. But my job, I feel like my call from God is I want to communicate for them, I'm for you no matter what. It's not just if you please me, I'm for you. I'm for you no matter what. So that, as I come into thinking about them, praying for them, what am I going to text them? How often will I connect with them? That's part of my role. God's given me to do that. And I can tell whether I've done that or not. So that in all of my roles, I have bits of those things that are unique to me based on my design and based on my placement that have pop and inspiration. As you consider those roles, you want to be considering, what is God asking of me in that role? I mean, really asking of you. or should I say, commanding you or commissioning you? You are his representative in that role. What does he want from you? So when you take the time to do that, you are coming to Jesus as Lord, coming to the Father as, you are my Lord, and you care about the people in these roles. And I can't believe it's even true. I get to represent you. I get to be an ambassador for you in my spheres. And so, again, that may be a stretch for you to learn how to do that. I just don't want you to give up and think you can't, or to give up and say, I just want to skim. You know, a number of people are saying, like, I'm just trying to pick up what I can from the videos. Well, I give it my best. You know, I try to be a little bit of a man on fire when you show up for these things, but it won't do anything to you. The money is in the implementation and the transformation that'll happen. Is if you can buy this worldview that I'm selling you, it can be very lifestyle and life trajectory changing, but it's going to take you a year to like really do this. But if you do it, as we talk about, even with the Sabbath uh, um, cycle or the Sabbath rhythm, you're going to have lots, 52 of these over a year that you're coming back to my design, coming back to my placement, coming back to my roles and relationships, learning how to look at those. When we come to that place, what we are doing is simply trying to agree with and align our lives, our life practice, and our understanding with what God has made clear for us. It will put you in a different place of how you pray, and it will put you in a place to pray with authority because you are representing him clearly. And so that will strengthen your prayer life, and it also puts you as a responsible kingdom player in your world. That's what God has for you. It isn't about whether you're successful or not. He wants you to be a player, a kingdom player, right where he puts you, just how he designed you. And so the more that you start to raise your attention and say, I'm paying attention, I'm receiving the gift of who I am, and I'm receiving the call of where you've placed me in a rhythmic way, it will be powerful. So I want to encourage you, don't stop. Recognize that these three building blocks of design, placement, and Sabbath rhythm are life changers. I promise you they'll change you. But I also recognize there are dimensions of it that are new for all of us. And it might be, it will be difficult. And I'm concerned, once we're done with this thing, that you say, well, I remember we heard about it. That won't be it. I want to encourage you that we're going to press in deeper than that. So do the work, do the hard work of the initial swings at it, and then you lightly review it. So that's why it's in a notebook. You can just come out, you can flip through the pages however you want, but you're looking at it. And it's becoming what was first, like, what is this? And how does this fit? Starts to be like, I know this. I know. It's like reviewing for an exam, except you're reviewing your life. You're reviewing your design. You're reviewing your call. So surfacing your purpose, you'll notice if you've gotten to that, and I'll come back in a moment, but if you've gotten to that, it requires the backdrop of all of this that we've been doing. So I realize when I said we might not even be able to get there tonight, for many of you, it's like, isn't this what we're here for? Well, actually, the backdrop of all this is so that the purpose and design feeding into each other, right? Your purpose is because you're designed to fulfill that purpose. And not only is your purpose and design, they don't just feed each other, your placement is where you get to express those. So those things all relate to each other. But if you don't know who you are and you're not being responsible where you are, your purpose doesn't mean anything. So let me make that clear to you, because that's a kind of a bold statement. If you don't know who you are and you're not responsible with where you are, your purpose doesn't mean anything. It's a dream. It's magic. It doesn't do anything. You're hoping that you're going to hit the lottery and be the winner. But that's not how kingdom life actually works. And so to get to that place, when we come to the starting to the surface your purpose, you're going to want to hear from God, because you're not inventing your purpose, nor are you creating your purpose. You are discerning your purpose. But you can't discern your purpose if you don't have a lifestyle where you learn how to be still. Because to discern your purpose, you have to also be able to be a little bit detached. So you're wanting what God wants for you, and you're not demanding it. You're not saying, this is what you want, right, Father? You're able to come and receive his identity for you and your placement. So it's centered in God, and the only way to receive that is learning how to come to a kind of a peaceful soul state. And that itself can take a long time to learn how to access. If you are running at a pace of life that doesn't know how to slow down, you won't be able to hear God in the depth of what we're after right now. If you're very wounded and you haven't addressed things either that have gone down for you, or that you have done, or that are happening in your relationships right now, you can't be stilled in order to hear him very well. So these things all interplay with each other. As they're meaningfully implemented, they empower each other. So what I want to encourage is that as we're learning it, that you not worry about doing anything perfectly. For some of you, that'll be your thing. Like you want to do it perfectly. No worries about it. Anything worth really doing is worth doing kind of poorly on the front end, just to get yourself doing it. But you want to do it up to the level that you understand now. And so you're doing where you are, not imagining what you're supposed to do and checking the box as to whether you did it well enough. You're just starting to make the changes of implementing and scheduling your weeks to prioritize what you now want to prioritize. So for some who are struggling with whether, I'm falling behind more and more in the course, again, that's fine with me. You're not doing anything that harms me. What I want you to consider is two things, though. Is that what you want? And if it isn't, and if it is, that's okay. I mean, if you're saying you don't understand, my life is like this is what's going down, that's fine. That is a viable option. But for some, it is, I really wish I could. I just don't have the discipline. Well, actually, we can help to get there even today. It takes just saying what things are important. And if so, I need to schedule them into my week. So let's imagine that whatever it is you want to work on, I want to watch 3 of the videos this week and do, whatever the one download is. Say, okay, so when will you schedule that? Because it won't happen if you don't schedule it. And you have to schedule it at like a meaningful time for you. Samantha brought up last week, I think, do you do like reflection at night or in the daytime? Because if I remember, she's a nighttime person. Well, for me to try to do it at nighttime, that would not work for me. It might work for you, but you have to be honest with yourself. And if you find that even though you're alive at night, you have so much going on, whether that is entertainment or whatever the competitions are, that you can't do it, though you're alive, it's hard for you to leverage that time where morning would work. It doesn't matter. You're the only one. Nobody cares but you. So just be honest with yourself about what your priorities are right now and move in that direction. In the earlier video, I'm saying an awful lot before I'm even taking a breath for you guys. Sorry about that. We talked about busyness a little bit. And I don't know if I've used this expression with this group, but busyness is in for because you are all competent people. There's not a slacker in the batch. If you think you are one, and maybe Tom doesn't know me, I'm really a slacker. No, you're deceived. You may have some sloth in your soul, but you're not a slacker. Everybody on this crew, that's not happening. But busyness might be an issue for many of you. And busyness might be even like, I can't get done what I have because I'm too busy. And so I like to put a word next to busyness, an adjective next to it, that I say is insidious busyness. And that's not all busyness, but what I mean by insidious busyness, the word insidious is something that creeps in without your understanding, that is malevolent. And so insidious busyness actually has a personality to it. I will call it a stronghold. And our culture is riddled with insidious busyness. And I would define this kind of insidious busyness is a busyness that keeps you from doing what you want to do or you believe that God wants you to do. So if there is a busyness in your life that is keeping you from doing what you really want to do or is keeping you from obeying God, that is a busyness that must be addressed. That's a busyness you can't hide behind anymore. It's a busyness we have to call out in each other's life. And so when you hear it, we can just ask questions of each other. Well, what are you talking about when you say busy? Because it's also a way we hide from responsibilities. So we need to stamp over commitment, busyness out of our lives. If you can, at the end of this course, the last thing is how to prune your life, and how that'd be down the road a little bit. But even at this point, there's things. If there's something that's keeping you from it, you have to think about, how am I going to remove that to have enough time to do what I want to do? And I will continue to submit to you, not knowing your lives, that this is one of the most important things in your life. Because this is getting down to the bedrock. This is where you will have to dig deep to understand who you are, to understand where God has placed you, and to understand your purpose. Is there something more important than that? I would venture to say probably not. But it could be a time where you have to say, like, well, yeah, but I can't do it at this pace or whatever. That's all fine. I just want to encourage you. I think this will be valuable. But to do it, you're going to have to figure, okay, where does it fit in my priorities, and how will it work out for me? I wanted to open to ask if anybody has gotten to the place where you have gone through the first two modules. So the second module, particularly when it gets intense at the end, when you're saying, like, here's my roles and here's my relationships. Usually, and a few of you are these folks who, when they get to that place, say, this is too much. There is no way that I can get a handle on all my First of all, my roles aren't that clear. And now all these relationships, and you're saying that I'm going to be managing these relationships. That is impossible. I could never do that. So that, if you feel that, you're not alone. That's what everybody who's ever done this feels like when they first do that. And again, you've heard me say, you're doing it. You're just not doing it with order or priority, or with a sense of that God has actually put you in that place to shepherd that field or those fields. And so there's a responsibility with it. And so the reason that we want to get clear again on our roles is that helps us to say, so why am I concerned about these fields? So it gives us a reason to wake up before God and consider the field. But what I want to ask, if there's anybody here who's gotten to that place and gotten through the relationships, and if so, if it was as heavy to you when you finished it as you imagined it would be when you started, has anybody gone through that roles to relationships and looked at those? If so, raise your hand and say, okay, what was it like for you? Help us know, because many are terrified when I describe it.
Hi. Been a while. So for me, I guess the more impactful, well, not more impactful, but what really stood out was, I guess, just the experiences and knowing that just my roles rather, how they just kind of affect certain things, and just having certain people kind of attached to me, which I didn't even really think of it as an educator, as a daughter, as a leader, just certain things. It was definitely way more than what I thought. And in the beginning, it kind of felt overwhelming. I haven't gotten to the point where I kind of prioritized, what should really be kind of first in importance, but it was more so like an awakening for me.
Okay. Great, great, awesome. Thank you, Kelly. One of the things that was thinking about the other day, when I talked about the relationships, I brought up like three levels, but actually, uh, I don't want to make it like you've got to put everybody in a box, in a box or in a bucket of what they are. But I want to encourage you to do what will work for you. And there's actually a lot of nuance, but you don't have to spend a lot of time with it. Some weeks you're going to be like, I like to view it as each one of those relational spheres. It's like a flock, because you really are. You're a priest, right? We're a kingdom of priests, so you're a shepherd of that flock. But sometimes you're looking, and you got to pull out the ear of each sheep and look at their tags and see all the stuff about them. But you aren't going to do that every week. Sometimes you're just looking to see, are there sickly sheep here? I'm going to be addressing that. Other times you're looking at like different things. This is time to shear the sheep or whatever it is. You're just aware. You're finding what works for you. But in that's in the imagery, but in the way that it applies spiritually, there's some people I need to pray for them. Here's somebody that actually I need to distance myself from them. They're actually doing harm to my soul. That's a challenge I need some distance from right now. Or it could be I need to invest in that person. Or I need to have fun. This could be a friend, this is somebody that I think we could just be having fun. Like, so but you're paying attention to the flocks. But anybody else want to share what it was like for them to do that? I saw a couple. Go for it.
For me, I think what was most impactful was just going into it feeling like a sense of purposelessness, or feeling like, man, in former seasons I've had more clear roles in the church or in ministry, but then I think just realizing that choosing to believe that God's already placed me in these specific situations, and then it was like I could see, just paying attention to, okay, who are the people he's highlighting, and I already felt like he was highlighting them. So then it just kind of helped me prioritize those people. So I think just having you say, like, you're already uniquely placed and there's already people in your life, just pay attention. So that really helped me.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you do, one of the values of developing whatever it looks like for you, some level of Sabbath rhythm, that you can come back and look at those things. You don't have to every week, look at your relationships. Again, it's where are you and what's your faith and what's your discipline right now. But to do it at all is better than you may have been doing it. So that can be beneficial too. And I don't know if I had mentioned this to this group or not, but even in the roles, if you're at a stage where you don't have as many roles as you have at other times, like you're saying, Jenny, there might be a role or two that you don't have, but it is part of what you're hoping for in the future. So let's say that it is, I want to be a software engineer, but right now I got nothing. But I'm working at a grocery store, but that's where I want to go. So, but it's something you're at this stage maybe praying about, and you want to be praying about that weekly, or you're reading about it, or you're researching job opportunities. So it isn't a role for you yet, but yet it's a role in your life that you are growing towards and growing into it. And so for some who are taking this, I don't know if this group, if there's any, but some are at a place where they're like at a transition that they're aware of, like Marinelle is kind of taking this because she sees a transition that could be in about like 3 years or so. Is that right, Marinelle? Am I remembering that? And so that's like planning ahead. That's like awesome, right? So she's clarifying now within mind the next season that's a little ways out, right? It's not like crisis. It's like, okay, I want to clarify that. Now, in that process, there might be a role or two that she's aware of that are going to be in the next season. But you might want to start putting those into who you are now so that you are moving in that direction. Good. Anybody else want to say one thing about what it was like to do the relational piece of it? Betsy.
I can just say it was actually really helpful for me because I feel like, and I'm sure this is true of a lot of us, that there are actually a lot of different relationships that we're maintaining. And so even just putting it down on paper, typing it up and then really praying through how to prioritize actually felt more manageable to me. Even though I think we've talked about, you don't want to feel like you're being instrumental with relationships and prioritizing some people over others. But especially doing that prayerfully and kind of thinking about who are the people that I want to invest in.
Yeah.
And then I actually really I was just talking to a friend tonight who's feeling the same way. And we were talking about, what about evaluating it every week? Because then it also feels like you're giving space for things to shift and change. So you're not saying these are the only people I'm going to invest in forever or for the next year, but I'm going to try it this week and really see what God does and how I'm directed.
Yeah.
So I'm also a planner, so I love to kind of having more of a planning tool, but I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, and we know Jesus had different layers, right? That he did have different layers. And he had people that he was like, I see who you are. He wouldn't entrust himself to people, right? To some. Then to others, it wasn't just the disciples that were his buddies. It looks like Mary and Martha and Lazarus were like just pure friends. That's like where he went when he needed to chill. You might not read that in the text quite like that, but but he had different ways that he related to people, and he was aware of who to take on this one. No, you guys stay out there. You three come in. Well, it's going to be a faith deal. We're going to go for that. Good. Let me open up another kind of a question, and this is for your questions, because before I have a little bit that we can share about surfacing your purpose. Again, you'll know if has anybody even done the download of surfacing your purpose? I think some people have even done an assessment on surfacing your purpose. All you who have already done an assessment on surfacing your purpose, you are overachievers. Just stop. I'm kidding. But are there any questions, and the more concrete and specific, the better, that you're struggling with, either in terms of understanding or implementation, that are pre-surfacing your purpose? So from the first two modules, if there's any question, whether it's about, I don't know what this meant, or I'm having trouble implementing this, this would be a great time to share that.
One process question. For the Sabbath Rhythm part,
Yeah.
do you have any PDFs or downloads for that kind of go through the questions to ask for the day and then that reflection period?
I don't think I put anything in relation to what to do with that day.
Okay.
Do you remember anything there, Paulia? I don't think I have anything like that. I've done, I might have even done it I've done like a Zoom or two on it, but I don't know if I have any download on it.
I screen captured a few of the finished key slides from the Zoom part, but
yeah, okay.
That was good.
Yeah, and in the download, I think I do have a couple books that are good, but I don't have anything myself that I've put together that I can think of. again, what I try to do myself is really, well, in the section of after surfacing your purpose is a rule of life section, and that starts to do that part of it too. But in what we're doing right now, it would be to just look over the roles, relationships, and responsibilities, really, and bringing those in. But you don't. The other thing is, this is not like a new way to organize your work. It's a way to interact with God around your work. And so there's again, as I mentioned that night, of just stop, rest, renew, reflect. That's where the money is. And then from then moving towards re-envisioning, planning. So that process, though, is what will make it alive. Anybody else? Any other kind of question? Let me bring up two things that I had heard. One was someone said, "I'm not sure what you mean by the shadow side of your personality." By that I mean with any of your strengths, even your strength finder strengths, but particularly as you look at your Enneagram, again, those are the two biggest tools. Actually, they're all four of those. The DISC is of value. The Myers-Briggs is a really good value. The Enneagram and strength finders, you do want to have those in your notebook. And again, if you want more interaction or whatever, or deepen those, Polly or I could do that. But those also have shadow sides, and sometimes the shadow side is an overextension of the thing. So like I'm an 8 in the Enneagram, and you also know that your Enneagram's right because it's kind of embarrassing to tell anybody else what it is. And an 8 is the kind of like driven challenger, pushes too hard, has glaring blind spots and all that kind of thing. But so the strengths of it are that I can be strong and I can defend, make the weak safe. I can fight off enemies. The shadow side is, if I'm not in a good place, I fight off good people and make the weak feel terror and don't listen to anybody around me. And so the shadow is the negative side of those strengths. And we really need to be aware of those and recognize they are so different for each person, and there's a pretty wide variety in this group. So it's important to be aware of the shadow, or some would call it even the non-resourceful side of the Enneagram kinds of things, because we dwell in those things. And so we just need to be aware of them. They aren't going to go away, but we can live less in that area and move more towards the strengths of those sides. And the other question that I wanted to ask related.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
With the Strengths Finder, and I think I've mentioned this before, but there's a term, like there's the balcony, which is this open place of this broad place where you're using your strengths, and it's in this productive and positive way. And then there's the basement, which is this sort of dark and cramped place where you find yourself. You see the shadow side of your strengths. You're in a place of you're not in necessarily a healthy place. But what I was going to say is that I have a document. It's just very brief, that goes through every strength, and it has just a few words that describe what the shadow side might be. And of course, that's something that's determined by, it's a unique thing. It's determined by you sort of processing how you live your life. But it might be helpful for people, if anybody's interested, just to look at some of those words that describe what that shadow side might look like. So I just want to say I have that document, if I can make it available to people.
Would it be possible if you email me that and I could send it out with the video tomorrow? Would that be? Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go for that.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. Um, relatedly, I want to discuss again if on the surfacing your purpose, the first, as you read it, it's kind of like I do it, like a lot of disclaimer on the front. It's kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're gonna slow down. I talk about being still and things like that. And because what we want to do is to discern our purpose. And so I want to discuss just a couple topics related to that, to the pre-work, and then next week we'll get more clearly into that process. And one is terms that you may have heard in some settings before: true self versus false self. And the reason that I want to bring that up is that, you know, sometimes what we think our purpose is might be related more to our false self, which is an understanding of ourself that isn't God's perspective. It isn't actually who we authentically are, but it's related to what we have created. And we create things, and it could be, you know, when we talked about in the Enneagram of 5 different ways that our identity might be marred, whether that's original sin or family of origin or circumstances or decisions that we've made. Our true self is kind of like this is what God has created me to be, with my strengths and my weaknesses. My false self might be that because, you know, I don't know, I was talking to somebody recently, and their personality was radically different than all their siblings. And so the culture of their family, they were not able to be who they were and be accepted. So they create a persona you don't recognize even when you're doing this. So that could be that you know, the family's an aggressive family, but you're pretty timid. Well, either you have to get out of the house, or else you have to learn how to put on a fake self to fight it out a little bit. So our false self sometimes is either what we want people to think we are, or it could be related to what we've had to become in order to kind of like survive or to cope. And so that takes often what that starts to become apparent through relationships with others. We rarely recognize this stuff except with others. And it's some of the reasons why, you know, the people that we know well are the ones that we tend to hurt, or we're always the things that people that drive us crazy. It isn't that we have that same thing, but something about what that behavior is grabbing this part of myself, or surfacing this part of myself that I really hate. And instead of being able to take a look at that, I will blame you for bringing it up. So if I just didn't have you, I wouldn't see this thing. Well, it's true, I wouldn't see it, but it would still be there. And so the false self are parts of our self too that kind of cling on to. They're like leeches to our true self. And so they get their kind of their life off of the edges of our personality. But because of that, it can even be that you know, as I've mentioned before, I grew up very small physically. So I may create a false self of being bigger than I am, whether that is through my language and exaggeration, or the way my posture or my voice is to try to compensate is a false self. Another way to think of those would be to add like kingdom reality to that. And there's the new self and the old self, right? We're supposed to take off the old man and put on the new man. Take off kind of the old clothes and put on the new clothes. When coming into relationship with Christ is this new dynamic that actually can free us from the entrapments, the false understandings, the hiding, the posturing that attach to our identity. And so we want to receive the new self so that we can be honest with our true self. The new self is rooted in grace. And grace is forgiveness that allows you to be, I am who I am by the grace of God. I'm not more than that. I'm not less than that. I'm not more than that, and I can accept the limitations on my life. I'm a 60-year-old man now. I'm not going to be able to do some of the things I used to be able to do. That's not because something's wrong. It's because there's a limitation on my physical capacity. That's a true self. A false self would be, I could still take you. That kind of like, I'm not letting go and I want it, that kind of a thing. But the new self of God's grace for me to receive who I am and where I am, and allows me to be my authentic self, which is the true self. That's the one that actually you can have a relationship with somebody. Your false self is a fake relationship. So we want to do the deep digging to find who we are, so that we can come to a place where what we're surfacing is God's purpose in our lives, not my imagined purpose or my invented purpose or my constructed purpose. See, this is not homework assignment for you to develop your purpose. It's a discovery and discernment process. And I don't think you can get there if you haven't done the earlier work well. If you haven't already come to terms with who you are by your design, and you haven't come to terms with, here's my placement and my responsibilities and a sense of rhythm to my life. Now I can start to make some margin or some room so that my reflection can get down deeper to the real me, rather than what my parents wanted or what I always thought I should be, or what, those kinds of things. You don't want those to get interspersed with your sense of your purpose. And so that's why I've kind of held off and pushed it back that far. Does anybody have any questions about those ideas of true self, false self, or new self, old self, any of that kind of a thing? Okay, awesome, good. We're all tracking. That's what I'm going to say is going down. So what we're after, again, the theme or the general thrust of the course is an aligned, satisfying, inspiring, effective purpose. That's what God has for you. And aligned with God's design of you and his purpose, satisfying to your soul. So what we're after is not something that's going to rip you off. That if I get this, I'm not going to be allowed to drink or whatever, or any of the religious things that you're afraid of, that if you lay hold of, your life just has to go down a line and it's going to be bad news. That's a religious spirit attacking this process. It's going to be aligned, satisfying, inspiring, and effective, because the God who made you on purpose loves you as you are. And he gave you a purpose that is perfectly fit for you. And he gave you that purpose because he wants you to be effective. You can't always tell how effective you are. You can a little bit, but you can't always tell that. So I want to ask you to, for you to ask yourself at this stage, what do I need to do to get down to kind of the bedrock of whichever module that you're in right now? Did you get down to that place? Did you dig down to a foundation that now you can stand on that thing and you feel like, I got it? And it isn't perfect. You will be able to, as Betsy said, in relation to even the relationships thing, you're going to come back. You can tweak it as much as you want the rest of your life. Again, nobody cares. Nobody's looking over and saying, how clear is yours? How flowery is it? How inspiring? It's whether or not it's clear for you and inspiring for you. But is there any work that you need to do to understand it? And then the next question is there any work that you need to do to start implementing it? Because understanding it isn't enough. It feels like it will be enough. It isn't, though. You've got to start doing whatever that thing is. So if it's related to your roles, well, are you starting to actually do something, that you're planning some things related to those roles? Are you clear in your understanding of your design, your identity? Well, are you actually praying that? Is it informing any decisions you're making about business or work? It's not until you're applying it, that you're implementing it, that it's starting to now change and direct your life. And then, as I've mentioned on other Zooms, when you get off of here tonight, if you can just put 5 or 10 or whatever is good for you, put a few minutes into it. Whatever God has highlighted tonight, make that clear for yourself. You think you will remember it, you won't even remember it tomorrow. It will fade, I promise. But if you're taking notes, then highlight the notes that you even took. Like there could be a word or a phrase that you're like, God, I want to lay hold of this. Put it in your planner for tomorrow or whatever, that you want to remember it. But also, I want to encourage you, what are the few action steps that are realistic for you this week? And so jot them and plan them. And if you do that, you're already starting to work a rhythm. Just practice that, even with these little calls, these little videos. Just say like, okay, at the end of that, I want to see, Lord, what do you want me to apply, to activate into my life? And I want to schedule those. And don't outstrip what you really have, your grace. Just do where you are, but put it in, and then just try to do that. And if it's a high priority, you can move that in the schedule. You just can't alter it. So that's one way to do it in your mind. Like say, if you're planning to do Tuesday morning, you want to do this thing, and you get in, somebody says, hey, I'm flying into town. Is there any way we can have breakfast Tuesday morning? That doesn't mean you say, no. You say, sure. But you take that, whatever that little block was, and you have to reschedule. You have to move it. So don't say, I'm not going to do it. These are, if it's a priority, it's going to get done. And you just want to make that happen. Any thoughts or questions before I close us up tonight? Samantha.
So I just want to go back to what you were saying about, the, I guess, messiness of it, because I feel like until I can at least establish a routine around reflection with God and around my roles, I really can't move forward to surfacing my purpose. And so even though I downloaded, the PDFs from that section, I feel like, no, I really can't move forward until I do that. And so I'm wondering if it's, well, stay in that space or start it and try it. And even though you may not have it perfect, move forward. I'm still not sure about that.
Good. So the two things I would say in relation to a lot of the implementation, but to starting to get the rhythm, is two things. One is determine any amount of time that's going to work, that you feel like could be working for you. Pick a day, and it's best if it can be the same day. Now, for a lot of people it'll be Sunday. For me, it's Monday. But if you're like, I can't do a Sabbath, maybe I can do a S, just the first letter of it. And so that could be at 1 hour. And what are you going to do with your 1 hour? You can even look at what I had said, stop. You can do all the things in there. You can stop, rest, renew. You can just go through all that, or you can just do one thing. You do whatever you want, but do it because you want to do it with God. Because Sabbath is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Sabbath is not a homework assignment. Sabbath is a get to. God wired it in to the plan of life. And that, whether you finished your work or not, doesn't matter. You get a day to just enjoy with him. And you get to be renewed. You get to rest. You get to be creative and delight in the day. You get to think about your call and your purposes. I mean, it's like incredible that we get to do this with the counsel of God. So this is really good news, but it's so foreign that it sounds like it's going to be nasty. It isn't. But even if you do, I can tell you from first group to kind of people going through that, one person just said, I just did an hour and a half. This is a leader, a Christian leader, an hour and a half a week in that day. And Paulia can tell you, he says this changed his whole life. Just that. And then it makes you want more. So I would encourage that. But the other is also the just, that simple yesterday, today, and tomorrow is another little Sabbath practice to put in the days. You can say, well, I'm going to try that. I got a goal this week of doing it twice. Again, it doesn't matter. Whatever will get you to a place where you feel like, I'm actually now learning to check in with God in a meaningful way that isn't just a religious, I believe in you, God, it's much more aligning your life, that's saying, I'm checking in. Here's where I am in the process of it's almost like we've been dropped in from Mars onto Earth in the name of Jesus, and we get to live it out. And he's like, hello, he's up there circling around the planet, and we're like, not even checking in with him. Like we got dropped here and we forgot we're from another planet. You're from heaven. You just don't know it. So you're here and you got to check in and say, like, what did you want me to do again? Like, this is not working. I need more help from you if you want this to happen. So, but when you think you're aligning with him and you praying that prayer, if you want this to happen, I need more help. He hears you. That's way different than if you're just like shooting a shot and hoping it'll help you. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Start small. Small and consistent is better than big and inconsistent. Any other last thoughts?
Oh, that is.
Go for it.
I was going to ask, you spoke about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Do you have any pointers, just small, like a small pointer with that? Because I'm like so sleep deprived. I'm trying to do it, and then I look back on yesterday, and I'm like, I don't even know what happened yesterday.
Yeah, well, and I don't either.
Busyness.
Well, yours is harder because you have little children, right? So that's part of the sleep deprivation.
I think so.
When you have when you're a mother of small children, there's often also not a lot of a lot of tasks or meetings. You're just trying to make it. You're treading water a lot. So you look back over what yesterday was, and you say, well, what was yesterday? A lot of nothing. A lot of like, I'm drained and I got nothing to show for it. That's the challenge of there's nothing like it. It's a high, hard call. However, if there is also, if your life, like when my wife still, we've had those 4 children. So she and her personality is one, she's not one who really likes to use her calendar a whole lot for like planning things. But for me, the way that I do yesterday is I look at my planner, because I put stuff in. And not only that, it helps me to also record what I did. So if you're doing things and you have some kind of a check-in time, whenever that is, you can also say, what did I do? I need to put that in there.
I do actually write down sometimes, and I check it off, and it makes me feel good.
That shows about, so you're that shows a little bit about your personality, right? So right? But so that's good. But so in those moments, though, those things that I did, if it interacted with anybody, or it could be that I did something and I'm just becoming aware of myself in that. It could be, what was I like yesterday? Because I knew I had a really tough time in the morning with my children.
Yeah.
So you're reflecting over that with God. So yesterday is to gain insight from the occurrences in your life. And if you don't have many, doesn't matter. Do you have any? And if not, no worries. Just say, Lord, my word right now, my reflection is I'm exhausted. Can I take a rest? Yes, that's great. Yeah. But then, at different points, you get different kinds of that. But that's all it is after is memory. Again, sometimes I don't even use words. I'll just use a person's name or the event, and I'm drawing it to memory and anything that God wants me to interact with. It's easier for me. And if you were tired, and it sounds like your personality, if you have a way that you're writing, that makes it better. So handwriting is really great. That's the best.
Yeah.
But I do a software thing because I can then search it and all that kind of stuff. But when you write it, that uses a part of your brain so you don't fall asleep the same way too.
Yeah. I've been using my phone as for the memo.
Yeah, good.
That helps.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the value of written prayers. And I encourage you too, as you moving towards that Sabbath thing. And I may have mentioned this, but you can also, with written prayers, that can a good way to start to increase your ability to hear or sense the voice of the Lord is to not only pray, jot what you're praying to him, but jot what you think he might be saying back to you. And that it can take away fear of doing it wrongly. Because if you have something wrong, you're going to be able to judge it later, or you can bring it to your pastor, or you can bring it to somebody and say, I think God was saying this, and they'd say, nope, that's not a good one right there. You can throw it away. But when we're often worried about hearing God's voice, particularly if we want to surface our purpose, and we want it to be clear and right, we shut down his voice, because his voice tends to be spontaneous and light. So if you come to God and you're looking for any kind of direction or anything from him, when you jot what you think he's saying, just let yourself go with it. Jot the things, and then you can test them later. Don't test them as they're coming, or you won't get very much. And then as you practice that, then later down the road, you'll get it more easily, just directly. Awesome. Well, let me close us in prayer up. Were you trying to say something, Kelly?
Sorry,
no?
quick question. The schedule, because that's what I had seen, and I like to write things down, but sometimes I don't always get to come back to it. But this is different than what I've been used to using. So my question is, would it be best to plan out your, like, I guess, day by day, so the night before, come up with your schedule, or do the whole entire week?
Great. Very good. And again, some of that looks for you, but I think that, good, what is best for you. But what you'll find is if you do it day by day, some of your biggest rocks or some of your biggest goals don't get accomplished. And so when you're doing it at a week, you're saying, so a little bit like, this is one I need to get in there. And so you put it may take more than one piece of the week, but so the week gives you a good flow, and then you review it on the days. So like I will only, on my week, I don't fill out the whole week, that gets filled out more as I go through the days, but the big ones I'm putting in there. So as I'm reflecting, I'm looking over those roles and saying, okay, if I don't look at am I going to connect with my kids, because they're spread around. If I don't think about it on a weekly level, the day isn't going to probably happen. It's easier for me to look at and say, all right, so this is a goal. When might that happen this week? So there's some things that are way easier that way. And then there's others where you get the ones that you want to get in on the week, do that. And then when you're getting to the day, now tomorrow, I had this planned. Is that going to work? Here's my other to-do list things I need to put in there. So I call, it's like the big rocks go in on the week. The little rocks I put in daily. I don't want to give the impression that I'm great at this either. Just trying to make it myself, Let's be real. Anyway, let me pray. Father, thank you for this chance to be together again. Thank you for the diligent hearts here, wanting to align our lives with your design. It is a faith exercise to believe that you created us on purpose, with a purpose. It is a delight exercise to believe that you love me, that I don't have to earn your affection. It is such good, delightful news. And that, again, I get to represent you in my many roles. I pray that you will help me to do that well enough that I actually am thinking about the people I'm relating with, that I'm able to pray with them, sometimes with wordless image kind of prayers, that I'm able to get ahead of the game, that I'm not just always catching up, that I can learn to say yes and no based on what you've made clear of design and placement. Lord, I pray ground gained for everyone here. I believe that your kingdom is advancing in our spheres, and that as we grow in our ability to hear your voice and to structure our lives to be like that man who builds his house by digging a deep foundation and laying it on the rock, as we build that kind of a life, we're going to be able to handle spiritual battles. And we're going to be able to help people become solid whose lives are a mess, because we're not treading water ourselves the same way. Grace, grace, grace. That the new self would free us up to be our true selves, so that we can receive your purpose, your purposes in our lives. I pray blessing and rest and restoration over everyone in the group tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Hey, awesome.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Okay. Paulia, well, if you can send me that thing out, that whatever the Strengths Finder darkness sides, that'd be great. Awesome. We'll see you.